governance and take the business to a far, far higher level.
Keynote speakers there. It's all for the event of the premium member, exclusive premium membership of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I'd like to quickly recognize few of our leaders that are here, while all of us are duly recognized for just to specifically mention that we have with us today Professor of Impact, Professor Oluyemi Oluleke Chibani, SAN, GCON, the immediate past Vice President for the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Welcome, sir. We now also the President of the Chamber, Chairman of the Council, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Hausa FCA. We also have the President, the two of the deputies here today, Engineer Leye Kupoli, Deputy President SCA. Also, our own Kudos, Ubon, Deputy President SCI. Last but not the least is Alaji Liu Katuka, the board chairman of the Security and Exchange Commission Secretary. Last but not the least, Vice President of the Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you. Once again, we are all recognized as female members of this chamber. We would like to quickly go straight to the welcome address by the President and Chairman of Council, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, for his welcome address. Please welcome to the podium, Mr. Gabriel Idahosa, FC.
Your Excellency, Professor Yoshiba, GCON, and said again that we both from Nigeria, distinguished captains, in this case, really captains of the industry. Those are the new members of FCI, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real pleasure to welcome you all to this special premium members. One of our most distinguished captains of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce. And I said it the first president. The premium members are the leaders of the leaders in the chamber, the very largest companies in this country. In areas. Out of our members, premium members, are less than represents the top leadership of the firm. And that's why it's extremely special for us to speak to us. These are people who control a very significant contribution to the field. Very grateful. We are really honored to have you. We can again say that our immediate past vice president is a leader whose intellect, whose integrity, whose commitment to economic reform continues to inspire confidence in Nigeria's economy. Long after I have left office, wherever he speaks, a lot of people listen. So we thank you for accepting to share your insights with us. The theme of this convention is reimagining Nigeria's economic future. Leadership, innovation, and global competitiveness. It couldn't be more timely. As you know, Mr. Vice President, our economy still faces very tough infrastructural gaps, rising costs, exchange rate volatility, and structural risks in various sectors of the economy. Yet within these challenges lie opportunities to reshape our economic story through visionary leadership, sound policy, and innovation to imagine Nigeria's economic future. We need to strengthen collaboration between the public and private sectors, which the Vice President at various times. Where private public are about to join us. and promote enterprise and technology and build institutions that reward productivity and competitiveness. The Lagos Chamber of Commerce will continue to advocate for reforms that will unlock growth, attract investments, and create sustainable prosperity. I would like to especially appreciate our premium members who very, very high value time on your businesses to be here with us. You are the bride and the soft of your CCI. Your resilience, innovation, and continued partnership are the reasons why the Chamber remains the leading voice of private sector. As we share this afternoon, I encourage us to engage. And I see the ideas that can help shape a new course for it. Because really and truly, a lot of you are the leaders of the economy. A lot of you are making changes that the economy can see foreseeable future. So we are defined not by changes as a country, as we are concerned in the Lagos Chamber of Commerce, but by the possibilities that we know can happen from this caliber of members in this room. Thank you for being here. And I wish all of us a delightful and inspiring workshop. Thank you.
Thank you so much. President, clearly the mission of this evening or this afternoon is clearly defined. The president, so we're good. We know why we're here. Or we have the immediate part public takes us through or share with us his experience of successes over time. Like those that briefly have a comment or a message from the chairman of the Security and Ethics Commission here with us today, Alaki, may regard you to
President, city members, management, neighbors, wish business leaders, and seek industry, and guests, ladies and it is my profound honor to address this discussion and the LCCI. The theme for us today is economic future, leadership, innovation, and the theme is not merely aspirational, it is a core action. This discourse rests on three pillars: leadership, innovation, and global competitiveness. First, leadership. The leadership Nigeria requires today must be visionary, reform-driven, but on strategic foresight. It is encouraging that the current administration exemplifies this characteristic. It has demonstrated boldness through structural reforms such as the removal of fuel subsidy, unification, exchange rate, and fiscal consolidation, thereby laying the foundation for long-term stability and competitiveness. Secondly, innovation. In the global economy, innovation is the currency of progress. It enables nations to overcome structural barriers and diversify their economies. For Nigeria, this means building an ecosystem that rewards activity, nurtures talent, and accelerate digital transformation. The Security and Exchange Commission emphasizes on digital asset, fintech, and economic-driven growth is the step. The global competitiveness, which is not remaining inward-looking. Nigeria must position itself as a credible global player, improving digital coordination, the case of doing business, the ease of doing business, investing in infrastructure, and developing a skilled workforce. Ongoing reforms aim at attracting foreign investment and strengthening the global regulatory framework that are critical in achieving this goal. Ladies and gentlemen, ongoing reforms, fuel subsidy removal, exchange rate unification, and fiscal consolidation. The new Investment and Securities Act 2025 are laying the groundwork for macroeconomic stability. From blockchain fintech reform platforms, virtual assets, innovation is restructuring the modalities of value creation, transfer, mediation around the world. Nigeria is not exempt. We are witnessing rapid growth in our mobile payments, biometric trading, blockchain, and digital. At the center of this evolving landscape is the Nigerian capital market. A foundational pillar, a resilient and inclusive capital market is key in unlocking Nigeria's value growth potential. The Security and Exchange Commission, as the apex regulator, is firmly committed in developing and regulating a capital market that is fair, efficient, transparent, and globally competitive. This commitment is entrenched in the Investment and Securities Act 2025, which provides the legal framework, innovation, investor protection, and systemic stability. As we deliberate today, let us move beyond reimagining to rebuilding, and from rebuilding to realizing the immense potential that defines Nigeria's economic destiny. The future will not wait for us. We must act sensibly, inclusively, and with the required innovation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alaji. That one for me, last part of the good message is powerful. Future won't wait for us. We have to move and work toward the future. And I believe this is one of the commitments of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And I like to, as we know, that our guest speaker today at this very reputable event is Professor Yemi Osinbajo, who had served as the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for 2 consecutive terms, from May 2015 to 2023. He held the position of General and Commissioner for Justice in Lagos, Nigeria from 1999 to 2007, leading significant judicial reforms that will become models for other states of the Federation. Before his political career, of course, Professor Osinbajo was a professor of public law at the reputable University of Lagos, University of the First, the founding father and global and project commercial law, and the presidential rank of the Senior Advocate of Nigeria. He served in the Justice Sector of the UN Mission in Somalia, was a member of the UN Secretary General's Committee on Rules on the Conduct and Discipline discipline of peacekeeping process. He was elected advisor to the board of AFDB and served as an independent director of Citibank Nigeria. He chaired the National Economic Council comprising governors of all the states of Nigeria, the Inter-Ministerial Energy Transition Implementation Working Group, which was responsible for the development and execution of Nigerian energy transition in 2022. While he was in office, 3 national development plans were formulated and implemented under his leadership, and he led the successful implementation of the Nigerian Economy Sustainability Plan in response to the Beyond his tenure in office, Professor Ojima remained dedicated to advocating for climate action globally. In 2023, he was appointed the chair of the Climate Action Platform for Africa of the Mo Ibrahim Foundation Council. He founded the Northeast Children's Trust, creation of sustainable learning ecosystem for vulnerable children made up by insurgency in the Northeast Nigeria. Also co-founded Future Perspective, an organization focused on innovation, founded Climate Positive and Independent Climate Action for Non-Profit, serves as the guardian for UNDP-led African Innovation Foundation. He is also an active member of the African Leaders Debt Relief Initiative, ALDRA. ALDR, along with a number of former African head of state. He is committed to addressing the urgent challenges of the sovereign debt crisis gripping the Africa continent. Ladies and gentlemen, captains of the industry, please make welcome His Excellency, Professor William. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please. The chair of the first LCCI, the board chair of the Security and Exchange Commission, Mr. Deputy Presidents, President, Vice Presidents, the LCCI President, Dr. Chile, and the Director General, premium members, LCCI President, ladies and gentlemen. And let me begin by thanking the Lagos Chamber of Commerce, led by the topic, Dr. Chile for the kind invitation to be here. It is unstoppable because the university does not take no for another. It's very talented. It is an honor to be here and to join the leadership of the LCCI to imagine Nigeria's economic future and to speak the opportunity with imagining Nigeria's economic future, leadership, innovation, and global competitiveness. Imagining Nigeria's economic future, leadership, innovation, and global competitiveness. This is, of course, a very one, of course, cannot speak to that in a few short minutes. So I will speak to a few points, and then hopefully we'll be able to, in the course of discussion, perhaps flesh this out a bit more. Again, with conclusion. So, sometimes we have, especially when there's lunch, that's the conclusion, so that people like me remember what it was. So the conclusion first is that innovation is key to the economic future. Innovation, knowledge, and potential. And the innovation that we're talking about will be largely powered by digital technology, AI.
AI is not just another tool. It's very important to bear that in mind. It is a that is capable of learning, reasoning, creating. I would not say anything. Because every other technological tool that we've seen has been a tool as a tool. But this particular is capable of learning very fast, faster than even a human. It's capable of reasoning. That is required every single day. Then it's capable of creating. Yeah. So one could literally tell an AI tool, do something, to do it. Recently, someone was showing me, this one, not particularly, not particularly one of the ChatGPT type. There was a photograph of my photograph, and he simply asked it to put my website, and it did. So the live and where we hardly been. So this is that's why it's so important. We are in a completely new phase of human history, economic development. My law firm, Simon Cooper, which I retired, just after left off. The tools that we use for the all these tools are specifically attuned to the needs of our work. So for example, to write a legal opinion using our own database, using the language of language, and give a complete legal opinion without anybody interfering. The same tool can now write judgments of the court. So it is possible for a judge to sit, listen to evidence without writing anything. This will record everything. It will translate it. It will then tell you just what a judge tells you. What the plaintiff say, what the defendant say, what is the law, and then it gives options as to what the conclusion should be. So we're in a completely new phase of life, and we must understand it is completely changing. The implications are so incredible. So for now, effectively, we're able to deploy digital technology and AI in various sectors: agriculture, healthcare, natural resources, renewable energy. Will largely decide how our economy will work and crucial for economic fortunes. And that is so, whether we do so or not, everybody else will do so, every other nation. And it's only with the effective economy in the different sectors of our economy that we can be globally competitive. There's no other way of being globally competitive. We are not really up to scratch in terms of the technology. So to be successful also, leadership must be visionary and ready to create the enabling environment. Leadership must also be capable of execution. For those of us who, all of us here know that the problem is not ideas, it's not policy, it's execution. Always, but at the same point, can we execute? Ethiopia decided a year before us that they would build special. We decided a year after that we would build special economic zones that would have certain type of economic tenants who would bring in, who would invest. We hired the same consultant, a gentleman called, I remember Justin Lee, a gentleman called Justin Lee, the Chinese gentleman, who had, these sorts of special economic. We paid the same amount to this thing. 5 years later, Ethiopia has 6 we have delivered on one. So execution is critical, no matter how many great ideas you have, even if you have the best experts. If there is no capacity to execute or we're careless, vision, obviously nothing gets done. So how will all this work? Yeah. I think the first one we can say for ourselves is that we have a population. Those who see it as a challenge, but obviously it is better seen as a we will more than double 20 people, population will more than double. Around 400. Those are the sorts of estimates. Overtaking the United States, third most populous country. So this explosive growth is a potential demographic dividend, but only if those millions can find opportunity. Otherwise, one report at one. If we fail to match our population growth with jobs and productivity, then it turns into the boom with a time bomb instability. What's the last time, my own opinion, is if the vaccine remains unskilled, we're not able to train that workforce, then it's even worse than just the possibility of instability. The simple truth is that Nigeria's future depends on innovation. That innovation depends on people, depends on the kind of training of people. And increasingly, the future of global innovation will be influenced by what happens here. The second point I'd like to make is that good policy is the fertile ground for innovation. Good policy. I just want to say, go on policy, that what I experience is that those who policy affects the most pay the least attention. Those who policy affects pay the least attention. In other words, business people pay the least attention. They're involved in the process. I was very surprised when the new tax reform was going on. The participation of the organized business sector was so light. It was almost not. There were few interactions. But many were shocked at some of what was emerging from the tax. If anything is going to affect it, but I found so many, in fact, almost every business partner is shocked. Is that there? Is that in that? Is that the cost? That. And that has been my own experience. Years that we try to do a lot of business forums, businessmen did a few of it. But we must pay attention. We can't shape policy if we're not paying attention to policy. Between 2016 and 2018, despite two recessions, our country produced 6 tech unicorns. These are startups valued at over $1 billion. In part because the Central Bank of Nigeria liberalized its licensing regime. That's the banking license, making payment providers like Flutterwave, InterSwitch, Adela, Scope, making them, giving them licenses cheap. And recently, money. So by creating licensing categories alone, and then sandboxes also for fintech companies, the regulator on exclusion, digital payment innovation. So this success accident was cultivated by policy choices, nurtured innovation instead of stifling it. Every time we implement it always results in explosive economic boom. And that's what we've seen with licensing categories. Of course, when we miss an opportunity, I think we missed an opportunity with cryptocurrency because we were way ahead, way ahead of everybody else. Well, the central bank at the time decided that this was too dangerous. We shouldn't even ban here, ban there. Although this Securities and Exchange Commission has already done up regulation at the time. So the Security and Exchange Commission was and we could have taken it as the off in case that's somewhat, but we could have been way ahead the rest of it. Because our private sector, informal private sector, young men and women, are already bought into cryptocurrency in a way that nobody else worked. And we're so, so much ahead of everyone else. So policy must be clear, it must be deliberate, and it must address concerns when somebody paying attention. The regulator is not, should pay attention. Generally speaking, say we are government privacy, we must be the ones who are pushing policy. We must push policy. As the policy on the central bank policy was pushed by a group of young people who are in the Industrial Council set. I was chair of the Industrial Council, and Nigel Dangote was the co-chair. And we had a soft, creative technology, creating of technology. So now 3 young, 2 men. They were the ones who put forward the proposal and said, look, this is the way that this will work in the free tech space, in the tech space. Fortunately, the central bank accepted, listened, and was able to take action. So a lot of the great ideas must come from us, and we must push these ideas. It's okay to say the regulator is not doing well, or it's okay to say the regulator are not executing well. But I think we need to put a lot more pressure and pay attention. The third point I'd like to make is the African Continental Free Trade Area, the AFC. This represents the world's largest free trade area by membership. It creates a single market of 1.3 billion people all in Africa. For Nigeria, it is a strategic opportunity to scale innovation beyond our country. AFCTA now lowers trade, harmonizes standards, allowing Nigerian agricultural producers, for example, to access wider help tech companies to expand telemedicine and pharmaceutical services across borders, textiles, sell products and services to more customers. Enables renewable energy providers to participate in regional power trade, for example, and infrastructure partnerships. So a single market, for example, it's so much Nigerian innovators will find collaborators and investors far beyond their immediate environment. So a major agricultural company in Nigeria that started in Nigeria now all over Africa. I was speaking to them a couple of weeks ago. They were talking about they've been able to benefit from just some of the protocols that have been in the AFCTA. Something called the Gadget Trade Initiative of the AFCTA, which was an experiment in how free trade area rules would work. Some countries participate, some private sector people, agricultural sector. And they were able to see what the big advantages were, and of course what the downsides were. But one thing that is happening is that we must pay attention to the free trade agreement, because we are the largest beneficiary of this country, the largest beneficiary. And if we don't pay attention, there's some other people. We were perhaps, if you like, the major inspiration for the AFCTA. Our negotiators were the lead negotiators. We did everything that you see to get the AFCTA. But at the crucial moment when I was supposed to sign, some people in the private sector said, there's nothing wrong. We might lose, something might go wrong. So we didn't sign the year after everybody else. Even where we were, of most of these ideas. But then we're in there now. I really strongly believe that this is something that we must take seriously. So the AFCTA transforms limited national markets into a unified launchpad. Nigerian businesses the chance not to grow, to grow bigger, but also to shape Africa's innovation future. It gives us a major opportunity to shape the future of African trade and African industry. But the major constraint, the continental free trade area, has been the inability to trade in our local currency. A major constraint, trading within Africa. Small businesses in particular. How do you trade in your own local currency? But what you have, of course, foreign currency first before business. But now, after led by Professor Brown, established the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, which is a response to that. So the settlement system, which was developed by the bank, in collaboration with the African Union and the AFCFTA also, the Secretariat, now facilitates real-time settlement of intra-African trade and payments in local currency. So people can actually trade in their local currency, not worry about changing first to foreign currency before trading. And then the settlement system is there to clear and settle the different payments in whatever currency they are made. It's already like 15 countries. It has 12 switches, and there are 51 participating banks. That number is increasing practically every day. Complementing something called Mansa, named after Mansa Musa, the wealthiest man. This is also an initiative supported by the AFCTA. And it's Africa's digital due diligence repository. So it's a single source containing information on Africa, including financial institutions, corporates, and SMEs. And the purpose of that information is just to facilitate potential investors, trading partners who are performing customer due diligence. So it's now possible to perform your due diligence using Mansa. Mansa is open, available to everyone. So you can do KYCs, checks on African companies, find out what they're doing, digital, fintech, trade, e-commerce, etc. So there are various opportunities that are provided by Mansa now. So I think that we have an opportunity in the AFCTA to leapfrog traditional development constraints. We can leapfrog over those kind of constraints, especially using our tools of the world's mobile money. And is that we're ahead in most regions of the world in fintech and payment solutions? We are way ahead. The payment system that I just talked about, when it is fully operational across all member states, now it's currently in 15 countries, but of course that's so trade in local currency becomes possible without pressure. And then there's creative economy, music, film, fashion, digital content of those things of the industry alone is valued at over 59 billion. And Nigeria takes a substantial percentage. So that should grow, become a cornerstone of intra-African trade, especially through digital channels. So we're in a great position. But to convert innovation to economic benefit, Nigeria must take certain deliberate steps on multiple levels. And I just want to what I think we need absolutely must do. There's a recent African blueprint that's titled Decoding Africa's Economic Future. And I would really urge that you read, written by a certain ambassador, Lavina Lankisa. He's an ambassador, an AU ambassador, a very strong sector. Now, see, these things lay out several crucial imperatives that apply to Nigeria course, applying to that, but I think applying to. The first is that we must pay heed to some of the strategies that unlock growth, trade barriers all over the world. Just number one, we absolutely need to make connectivity affordable. We must reduce the cost of internet. We cannot allow monopolies, communication monopolies, to just keep making cost of data, the cost of connectivity cheap. There must be affordable. This is the gateway to the digital economy. If we don't have access to digital economy, because the barriers are too high, it's a problem. Studies indicate already that 50% reduction in data costs would actually increase our GDP by 2%. 50%. And you know that if you go around today, I stay mostly in Abuja. When I walk around in the neighborhood where everybody is looking at us. All these boys who are selling something. Everybody's looking. And it's just incredible. Very difficult to find somebody who is not looking at you. Just look everywhere here. So there is engagement and people buy data. So data doesn't get cheaper. So Nigeria broke penetration at the moment is 50%. But data costs remain very low. But by investing in infrastructure, promoting competition among the telecom providers, we can actually drive down. And this is what we must extending broadband infrastructure to reach the underserved area, so that a young innovator village has the same online access. An innovator in Victoria, Yaba, where we have Yaba called. So we need to be cheaper. Ubiquitous connectivity will unleash a wave in my own creativity and productivity across Nigeria. The Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy has developed a project. I think the project is called the Bridge Project. And the whole idea is that they are developing infrastructure that will be able to deploy 90,000 kilometers of fiber optic across Nigeria. That completes the national network, which is already 35,000 kilometers. So we did additional 90,000. So the connectivity will reach a vast majority of local government across, including not just health and rural areas. So I think that this is going to be a fantastic thing. We must pay attention to making sure that it gets done. Second, we must expand energy access. And this is, of course, something we will continue. And we know we have to do more. We must massively as a lifelong and innovation ecosystem. And this means investing in power generation, especially renewable across solar, wind, hydro, and even safe nuclear energy. Alongside fixing the grid, expanding renewable energy. It isn't just about this is about powering factories, tech hubs, schools, and doing so sustainably. So if we invest ambitiously in renewable energy, we can actually create several millions of jobs. They say by 2035, I think some of the figures show that we will do almost 15 million jobs just by improving the energy sector. So there's a huge opportunity while bridging our energy. The third thing is that we must lower the cost of internet, lower the cost of it. In other words, build human capital. We must dramatically accelerate our investment in education and skill. And I think that there are several steps towards better trade, relevant trade, in order to reduce the cost and the cost of internet, the cost of human capital, and accelerate Nigeria's digital AI. The first is that we must make digital learning universal. We must make digital learning in our country universal. And we can do this by putting coding, data, and AI into every classroom, from early school to university. We did an experiment in a school in my building. The school is called the Learning Center. It has, orphans who, children orphaned by the insurgency. But at the time, the first phase, there were about 400. These children could not speak Hausa. They could most of them only speak Tanubi. I mean, they were that distant, and let alone English. But they got into this, to the learning center, the home and school. 5 years after, we hosted them in Abuja, 5th year anniversary. They were showing us what they were doing in robotics. They were showing us what they were doing with creating new websites, what they were doing with software engineering, the basic skills. These were young children who at some point not even speak Hausa. They were from the north, could only speak Arabic. They were, in fact, we did each repair with them to do fresh words, something they call fresh words. So they will say a word, and you are supposed to say a word that matched it. Yeah. To tell you how skilled they are for people in the English language. 5 short years. So everything is possible. No, everything is. It's not that. So I think we can do this cost effectively. We can use open source, which is what was used in school. Open source, no extra charge. Loads of open source. National e-learning, and then we can zero rate internet access for certain type. In other words, there are certain type. You say you cannot, you will not, even if you are going to you buy data, but it doesn't cost you data. That's just zero rating process. So it's possible for you to zero rate certain type internet access. So that if you are using a particular learning app, it's free for data, so you can use it for however many hours you like without it costing you data. The objective is to make it affordable and accessible to all. And that is entirely possible. The second is talent in the way that we fund it. We spend a lot of money. Someone once said, I can't remember exactly, he says that in Nigeria, people think that our wealth is in the ground, whereas it's actually the people who are working on that ground who are. And that's the truth. If we fund internet, we fund the training of young people, we will release the possibly greatest amount, greatest force, talent, creativity, and economic development that we've ever seen. Education, relevant education, will make all that. So we can create scholarships, can create fellowships, and national talent acceleration funds. People don't mind teachers to students. And we can back it up with public and private philanthropic capital. The third is that we must build practical innovation ecosystem, invest in tech hubs, shared AI labs, access to affordable compute power. We can make learning more hands-on, linked to real-world problems and industry. And one of the things that I've also found is that the tech hubs just places where creativity and some of what we've seen, a lot of what is going on in Yaba, not replicated in several different. I chair the Africa Innovation Fund, Bolton Fund. It's a UNDP fund, resourcing innovation ecosystems all over. But one of the things that we found is that, first of all, Nigeria has, and this is without any support from anyone, we have possibly more innovation hubs. And this innovation hubs self-start. And the kinds of things that people are already doing and what they're earning already from these is just absolutely incredible. So with support from private sector, from philanthropy and the explosion, which is incredible. The fourth is that we need to incentivize collaboration between schools and, let companies help also in shaping curriculum, offering scholarships, internships, and get incentives for training talent. This, I think, helps skills market. So relevant innovation is crucial. And we just have to keep on what is relevant. I'm aware that the has a second skills council. And we've been putting, I think we'll be getting to the establishment of the fund managed by the LCCI to train, develop that. A lot of it is focused on TVET and all that. But I think that also, there's a need to go beyond what moves. There's a need to appoint someone, some kind of consultant that can just get this thing done. Because really, I think we're at an inflection moment in terms of opportunity, and I think it's possible that the LCCI takes that on. And in particular, when you look at training, I was speaking to a certain gentleman. He runs an organization called Semicolon. The man, some. But what they do is they train young people in different aspects of digital technology and software engineering. But they train for 1 year, and then they have all sorts of ways around it. If you look at a lot of training that's going on, there are all these type of things that they call empowerment, where people are training for 2 weeks, people are training for 3 years. Not particularly useful, I think, but really helpful, but just information, training job to get people to be able to do stuff that is going to be useful to them. Really need those kind of training. But it's more difficult to fund those kind of training because obviously people prefer the 2 week, 3 week thing, shortly say, oh, now graduate's dead. What thousand people? So I think we need to focus on that. I would really like to take a look at those kinds of how do we support as relevant, especially to industry that many around. So we may need to go beyond just the working groups that have an experienced person who can time instead of finally, we must harmonize and simplify the rules and regulations and prevent overlapping funds between the federal, state government, local government. And Nigeria should lead also in advocating for coordinated regulations across Africa, because really we should be thinking in terms of that big market. A startup expanding from Nigeria to other African markets would usually face a patchwork of different rules, different licensing regimes, payments, regulation, data privacy laws. But I think AFCT's success will depend on regulatory coordination to simplify all this. And Nigeria, we're already doing so. We can work with AU, work with ECOWAS, high standards, that's already doing, especially for digital trade, making it easier for businesses to scale continentally. Domestically, still removing unnecessary red tape. The goal should be a one-stop, simple framework for businesses to register, to pay taxes, protect intellectual property with minimal friction. I already made my vision. So, only to say that innovation is about line building to solve problems faster and efficient. And that's the way future info is already upon us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for concluding with what we began with, which is the conclusion. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. We'd like to have this interactive session created by our able DG. His Excellency described the DG as never giving up strong unstoppable. Yes, my word is never giving up. His Excellency expression is the unstoppable. Let's put it together for our able unstoppable. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, Your Excellency. Thank you so much for those nuggets. I have taken a lot of notes, including what SCCI needs to do differently. And I'm hoping that the business leaders here have also taken notes of what their institutions, what their companies will need to do differently. So this is supposed to be a fireside chat. And typically we should be sitting down cozily, nicely together, chatting. But we need to kind of make do with what we have. So, the idea is to ask a few questions here in talk. I would say if anyone has a question, you have time to start with a question based on what he has described. I really like the idea that innovation is key to public improvement, and that is the reality. I think gone are the days where we thought that AI was evil, we shouldn't touch it, we shouldn't use it, we shouldn't do anything with it. And we've all come to realize that we can't do it. It's kind of part of everyday life. The best thing would then be as a business leader to leverage it, be more efficient, to be more effective in delivering to your clients and your customers and in contributing to economic development. I also like the fact that education is critical. A lot of times we talk about policy making and we have the right policies, but then you can have all the great policies you don't execute, then there's no outcome, there's no impact. So we need to pay attention to the key things that is laid out. As LPT, I will kind of put this into some of advocacy work. Of course, the connectivity must be affordable. We need to expand energy access. We talk about that all the time because we need power to power the economy. We need to lower the cost of internet. Incentivize collaboration. I've never heard that one. Incentivize collaboration. That makes so much sense that if we can enable companies or institutions to collaborate, then things will move and better. So I have a few questions. I think my first question is really about leadership. Your Excellency, there are many business leaders here, and like every normal Nigeria, we're all grappling with uncertainty and policy shifts. I want you to reflect on your time in public office, your time in academia, and even in the private sector now. What key leadership lessons stand out as most critical for navigating complex reforms in a dynamic environment like Nigeria? What should we do as business leaders to really get around policy shifts and policy inconsistencies?
First, let me say, of course, that I agree with you that policy shifts are possibly one of the most avoidable topics. Government pushes at the private sector and every academic. And you get that frequently also when there's business. I suppose in some senses, one of the major fallouts of plastic change, because people may also before you get into office, the other guy, the first person. If you get there and you're doing exactly what you were doing, why did you come? So there's a set, you must do something different. But that again is a big problem. And we have to remedy that. What the way that this has been done in other places is a charter investment, which is agreed to by political, maybe the policy of law. So the two political, for example, let's say it's on ease of legal, where both sides agree, all the political parties, we need to have that to register a company, speed, etc. So you agree with that. So you either pass it in, creating a policy. Whenever a government, these are that side, we can't change it. Some other things that in 1993, of course, since they also condensed when Google was making testing, they realized this was so much. They were afraid of a situation where government changed policy. So they actually had incentives and passed into law. They also condensated. So the schedule of the law contains everything. So you actually have to change the incentive. So they are waiting. But I think the most important is getting government to recognize that you can't have the recursive ones, therefore, you will never ever. And I think it's more in a lot more needs to be put in my own opinion, what is that the practice do enough, let's say, when it's very, very nice city. Your Excellency, everything doing well, doing very well, but there are few problems, but you are doing very well. They never get to do it. So I think that we must determine that look, we're going to these are the business, the presidential business forum. And a bit more frankness, where people are more involved. And I think that we should make our the LTCI, Brian Berry, involved common. But I think we should make this is what we see.
Wow. Okay. We've got our work clearly cut out for us. Okay, so I wanted to talk about AFCFTA. Thinking as global trade and investment flows evolve, and we want to see more trade across Africa. Where do you see Nigeria's comparative advantage in the global economy in the next decade, and what policy levers must be do to activate it?
I think we have a competitive advantage in technology. And we really must stress that. Because if you look at what is going on today, with and without government support, innovation is really just and you will find that there's a lot of disruption, even of traditional businesses. I mean, but if we license this payment system, practically all the launch of the bank will be taken off the table. If competition is really allowed, but there's so much. People are innovative in different technology. And the right policy is training talent. See, if you look at the space today, especially with talent in technology and legal types of businesses, you'll find that many people are going abroad looking for opportunity, Japan and all. But that we cannot run away from that. Talent will always go where it is best rewarded. And that's the case whether it's Nigeria or India or China. There are more people leaving those countries to America and to Europe than people who are ever living in Nigeria. But the important thing is that we must have a pipeline. We must train so many, such that even when some leave, we still have a good number. So for me, if there was one thing that is important, we training on time.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, then, in Nigeria. And then look at those who are in certain offices. They are also financially educated, but they're making the wrong policies or they're not executing right. So the question is it education or is it something else to improve maybe the moral or I'm not sure what it is. How can we find the right balance for Nigeria and getting them to do what they need to do?
I think they're two different. So how we recruit leadership and all of that's a different issue. I think that if we're talking about just talent, there's no other way. That India, for example, has benefited from is a way that we train in science and I mean, India has scientists, engineers, doctors, but they are very intentional. The Indian system who has all sorts of problems with leadership. The focus is making sure they're able to train. Regarding the question of civil servants behavior and all of that, I think one of the major things that I found is that we really must have the right type of leadership. And it's up to us to have to. Because if you don't have the right, there is a problem. There will always be. And if you look at it completely, where in the world that have made progress, it's always come down to leadership, political leadership. Okay. So I think we really have to address the question and make sure that we are able to produce forward quality of education. We hope we'll be able to get us here. Where we
Question?
Thank you, Your Excellency. Very insightful. By way of introduction, my name is Kunjiri Band. I want to go back to this presentation. You made a comment that population is what could potentially be a boom, could also be a technical factor. I want to flip the bit to say what really is the problem, having been in government both at national level. We talk about revenue increasing by 30%. Why is skill development, why education, every day you're hearing strike by school, these things are correct. What is really the problem for us to prioritize education, skill development, so that this potential will not come time.
Thank you. I think that The problem always comes down to and what leadership prioritizes. So, for example, if you look at, I take an example that I'm familiar with because I also studied. If you look at what happened in the Western region when free education, yeah, the government decided that this is the way to make that monumental change that is required to take a country from almost hunter-gathering stage to industrial agriculture to a stage where it is able to produce men and women and you go ahead and do. So the Western state that 41% of the budget on education, 41%, was unprecedented anywhere else in the world. Very nice amount. They moved taxes from 6 pence to 10 shillings. Everybody panicked. There was rioting all over the place. And people didn't want their children to go to school. Compelled them. They lost election. Lost election because of free education. So that is leadership. That's the kind of thing you know what the problem is. You know how to deal with it. It's just then a matter of do I want to? It's important. But it's not. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to what leadership is. What do we agree is important. Frankly, I think that if you look at the way leadership is important, state government are meant to deal with basic education and secondary. But there are loads of state governments that are not really paying much attention. I remember in 2017, I had a meeting with states where there were more school children than others. And I threatened at the time, I'm going to hold on to the Paris Club reform. So I said, I'm going to hold on to them. I said, I'm going to hold on to them. Unless they give me a plan for reducing out school. Everybody shall die. But eventually, it's a plan. So it's possible to put pressure because really it's not the federal government's primary education, secondary is really the state. But state governments, for some reason, education doesn't win votes. It doesn't win votes. You can be if you look at all the different things that people consider as priority. Education is not part of it. The state government itself that must decide whether you like it or you're going to school. And that's really a leadership issue.
Very quickly. Thank you for the
Thank you very much, sir. It's very nice. Very happy about something that you said, which of course that we should not shy away from saying the truth. Really to talk. When we do that, so that's really I'm happy to hear that. Thank you, sir. I'll take you just a shift a bit, know your thoughts on this topic, and it's just about industry. If I look at Japanese Business Federation, what does it say? Japanese Business Federation, what does it say? It says that humanity has moved from society 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. 1 is hunting, society 2 is agrarian, 3rd one is industrial society, the 4th one information, the last one is super smart society. Of course, that's where the world is now. But again, if we go back to our GDP, Nigeria is still an agrarian economy. It's about 23% of our GDP. And that was what United States and China used to be, where they agreed to larger part of GDP. Today, in US and China, agriculture is just 4%. And in Nigeria, our industry is less than 10%. So I want you to try and shed a bit of light into why we are trying to shy away from the need for us to produce, for us to manufacture. Bearing in mind that all this big economy, Malaysia, over $300 billion, they don't move manufacturing. China, $4.1 trillion, they do a lot of manufacturing. But here, this one emphasis is being put on it. Is there a way? Are we trying to short it, or there's another way out? Thank you, sir.
Before Your Excellency, also the Vice President in Lagos State, of course. Yes, you've taken us back to school, and like I said and noticed, everybody has learned. We knew you when you were in government. We knew you were also a big advocate on the east of the and lately we found out that the World Bank had suspended this annual report, which they usually do, because of maybe some criticisms that followed the use of business reports. So, and we had been at a very poor state of one person more than women in countries, and maybe seemingly appearing to be good, but I think the global on that report of the work. But being a big stakeholder, because it was something that we thought were very big on at that time, I want to find out, looking at the situation of things in Nigeria now, and I know you are both an outsider and an insider in the private sector, that is your leadership, you're the regulator, you also an operator yourself. How do you vision things have improved since you've left, or probably since you've been able to be the big advocate this is of doing business? Thank you.
Yes. Yes. There's one and there was more. So it doesn't have to let him answer this question. Your Excellency, you want to pick those two, or we take the last one? Okay.
I think the first question was on where we are in the whole dynamism of civilization from hunter-gathering to super smart. I think that the good thing is that we don't have to go to the stage of civilization, which is why we're in a position to leapfrog. And technology has provided us that opportunity. So in the past, when, for example, even with agriculture, when we had to go and be doing even the kind of mapping, the kind of soil tests, weather, and all of those things, we can do them now with technology, things that would have to take weeks at we can do in minutes. So we have everything now to enable us to move faster than the world has ever moved. So we're in a good position. I think that we have incredible opportunity now. It just depends on whether or not we take advantage of the opportunity. You know, and manufacturing is similar. You know, are we going to take advantage of the opportunity that exists? And I give you the examples of special economic zones and what happened. It's possible to do this. Sometimes it's because we haven't made sufficient. You know, because it is not government. Government is supposed to create the environment for manufacturing. But you can't do that if you have flip-flops in policy. If, for example, you tell me today, go and process rice, you know, and then you now open it, you destroy my business. So you must be very intentional about policy. It's the environment that creates these things. You know, someone was saying the other day to me about investment in Nigeria, and that of course people will always try and people want to invest in Nigeria because it's a big economy and they see the opportunity. They are afraid that something might go wrong and intangibles that really we should bring up. But if all we even said, look, Minister of Investment, we must make Abuja the number one center. That's all. If people can come into Abuja, hold conferences, the investments will follow. Because all people want is to say, I can live in this, I can work here. I see people here. I attended a 3-day conference. Everything went well. From the airport to the hotel, it's all people judged by anyway. So I think these things are creating the right one. But it will take all of putting pressure, prioritizing, saying this is what we consider. We have to put pressure on regulations. But we really must do that. You find that everybody just walk around the road. After 4 years, 8 years, 1 or 2 questions now. There is a president, regulate the appointment. It's for us to say, we need to be able to do. We need to be able to do. That's the way you got there. The only way to do. Mr. President, unfortunately, has been the governor, he understands very other things. And I think we need to put a lot more pressure. This is what it is. This is why we do this. Hopefully that will then, space that we want to see, my view, having been with God, is that things can't be done. But we also need to shape that vision. When I say intention, particularly that the gentleman with very big industrialist told me once, I spend 90% of my time talking to God. 90%. He says, I know how business works. I know my business. I don't need to spend that time. But I've had the best. Government is the only one I don't know. So I spend 90% focused. I think that in this, we just must spend more time on what government is on, what they are doing, like, hopefully that will help. Yeah, for my dear brother, one of the things that we do, I don't know, you are the one. You are the one who can say that. But to be fair, I think that one of the things I would see, I'm generally speaking, I'm believes that we are not waiting for it. Instead, progress is just that we could move a lot faster. There are so many things that are much. But we are indeed moving. For example, I think the removal of subsidies, I think the relocation of exchange rate are things that absolutely needed to be done. I think that what's going on, so many different policies and all that, in my view, right? The basic drawback is just that capacity to stay focused and to say this going to get there by X. I'm talking other countries, and some of those countries are smaller, but there's just much more in terms of execution. And I give the example of Ethiopia and ourselves. The Prime Minister of Ethiopia came to a presidential dialogue. In the first question, they asked, "And what happened to the special economic?" I mean, so there is an execution issue, and we must address that. Because, at the end of the day, no matter what policy, if you are not able to execute, you can honestly, things just appear to be going bad.
Thank you, Leslie. Fatuma. Good afternoon. The first thing I want to talk about really is how do we move from despite Nigeria to how do we move from despite to because things we mentioned are not because they happen despite conditions that we're experiencing. The points being now the thing that they did to try and make a name for themselves and business, despite the regulations and despite the business landscape, and it worked. And CBN had to play catch up to regulate, and that's how those licenses came out. That's one. Another example is, okay, so my company donated laptops to a school in Lafayette, and they were happy. Of course, first thing is they don't have power. So again, schools are doing things, and they have despite these harsh economic conditions. So how do we provide energy? It's a big problem. RA is doing its own work in that sector. Doctors, you mentioned about doctors being sought after in best parts of Nigeria. This is not the plan. That's happening despite the conditions. So the way they learn here, they have to memorize the entire textbooks and everything, and there's a pass rate which is roughly about 40%. So by the time they get abroad, they know everything, inside, outside, backwards, forward, and that's why they're the best at what they did. But they did that despite the conditions which forced them to learn in that particular way. And my last point is, you said about private sector getting involved, and for instance, the tax reform. LCCI did. We had a symposium on tax reform. We were one of the voices that got involved in that. The Metropolitan Club also had to talk to him about this. So it is happening, but in pockets. I agree with you on that it has to be wider. But my central question is, how do we get to because of the policy initiative, public action on our
Let me say that your philosophical description, circumstance, things happen despite the complications. And now we should get to a point where it is because. But just to be fair, I think that take the two examples. The central bank. Always, you will find that regulators anywhere respond to what they see, to what the circumstances are. That's generally the case. Sometimes regulators can be more, but most times they are responding to something. For instance, cryptocurrency. The regulators anywhere responded to it. They didn't ban US whatever. So it is possible for they do respond, they should respond appropriately. So to be fair, their response was appropriate, was the right response. And so we got the result. So that wasn't necessarily just fight. I think you can be fair. That was because of. But anyway, and if you look at it, how many countries train doctors practically free? I mean, the country where these people are going to, they don't train their doctors. It's not free of charge. I mean, our doctors are free. People don't pay for medical. What pay for medical education in America or in England? You know how. But we train free, which by itself can become you're not then able to fund the medical system of what they educational system. So I think there's a good side that anybody who is bright enough, who gets the right grades and access medical education. At the end of the day, if you then choose to japa with your medical education, no one can stop you under the law. My sense is that you are originally doing a mistake. Look at all the obstacles to business, power, for example. But even with that, we can still, there's still a lot. There's still a lot that's been. And there are no excuses whatsoever. We should be able to deal with the problem of power. We should. Many times, sometimes it's politics, sometimes it's this or that. There are so many issues. And I think the privatization, for example, is a great thing. But of course, we all know what happened. Many of those who eventually got licenses were not able to fund the companies that they bought, to fund reinvestment and all of those kinds of things. We had problems. I believe very strong that every one of the things that they are doable, they are possible. And frankly, I think that when you look at it, when you reflect, sometimes you have made the effort, sometimes you haven't done it. Because why should it be so difficult to train, even doctors, to train 10 times the number that were it's possible if we want to put our minds to it. But I think it's possible. Maybe also if you run.
Foreign direct investment, foreign direct investment from the sovereign funds. We're able to mobilize here and in watching the trend, that's the people interested. But we will also need the institution and notice in the presidency in Abuja. Actually, let's forward to address these private partners to embrace this innovative financing and to help kickstart the economy, very low interest rates, with very good terms, 2%. Six of them. And also we do have WBA, World Sustainable Investment Forum. It trains entrepreneurs. They also get themselves around the globe. They can now converse those investment communication for investors and reach out to institutional investors and their businesses around the globe. So WBA, according to the news about the curriculum, businesses, we do have what we can assist. Robbins, I think I can invite you to this year in Turkey.
You can invite, but I don't know whether I'll be able to come. The phone depends on my schedule. I'm quite happy to.
Thank you.
So, interested in
The private sector.
helping to make
That's the private sector. That's a work with the public sector. Implementation of projects.
make it creative. That would not be my first. I thought the other would be the one to create that for us. We can all participate. That public servant.
Thank you.
Value and knowledge of the economy should help us and reach our targets.
Can you talk to me after this?
Your Excellency, sir, there's one sector that is unable to do much despite using my brother's word, which is mortgage and real estate. It's tied to the cost of perfection. So I would take it as I was listening to everything you said, I could repeat quite a lot of it. Okay. And what word would you give to us in that particular sector? Cost of perfection, I'm sure the government already knows how much that will grow the GDP. We're able to do that, to reduce the cost and the ease of access to land and getting the title, and even the cost of the perfection. When you're taking a mortgage, it's almost like 30% of the cost of the property. Thank you.
In Lagos State, of course, this is a state. The federal government hardly ever has to do anything. But in the states, I'm sure that you reference marriage with this, you do business. This issue is one that we're all, I remember that I was telling you, the governor, Governor Fashola, was chief of staff. We did a reform at the time where we crushed the cost of perfection. And we found there's always an argument. The government would always say, you can't reduce it. You reduce it, it will affect revenue. We argued back and forth. And the governor eventually had the next question. And we did. The revenue increased because more people were able to do perfectly. So the point of it is that these things are entirely possible to do. It's not a big deal. The way that we reason, but we simply have to pressure on government to do this see it. There's no other way. These things have been taken time and time. They did a whole report on this issue. Now it's back to where it needs to be. If the cost is reduced from 30% to even 5%, it won't make any difference. In fact, revenue will increase. From more people, they encourage the government and protect their time. At a point we had almost a example. We all agreed on what to do. In fact, there was even an amnesty for those who had a backlog and plenty of money. So it's not even a problem. But I think sometimes their eyes need to be open to it, and they need to be, their attention is to be drawn. So I think that's the right way to go.
Maybe repeat everything else together.
Good afternoon, Your Excellency. It's Akim Adesina, presenting ICAS now. When you are going through the challenges that we need to surmount to actually become African, you mentioned the fact around connectivity to be affordable. You equally mentioned the access to energy, equally to be affordable, up to the extent of possibly zero rating certain applications on the internet. And to the private sector, the question is that how do we resolve the dilemma between the returns and the social conflict? Because people need to put investment into the ground to lay fiber and all that. And at the end of the day, we want it to be affordable and accessible because the social needs So how do we balance that? Because I think that that's actually the core of the matter. What incentive to give for us in private sector to make that investment? Because for government, it's about seeing that affordability and
I think government has a big role to play in making it easier in terms of policy, in terms of incentives that we can give those in that sector. But I think also we don't pay, I don't think that private sector necessarily is looking for a way of increasing the increasing access unless they see a profit, unless they see like profit. Then we will not use for any social causes, there any profit. So if they don't see that, they will continue in the way that, as a matter of fact, making more money. Let me give you a example. So I was counselor, I was actually getting and a particular telecom software had taken us to court, the state government, because we said they had to pay for the cost of their sales line, those towers. That this, as far as we were, was strong, that had to obtain government permission, control, the government control them. They said no, they was anyway, they took us. Said that we had asked them to pay 500 million. He said, no, they did not pay any such thing. That that this is a way of discouraging business. I said also. Then the council on the other side, the senior advocate on the other side, said to me that, look, it is in trouble, this country. You know, there was a time when it was evident that we were now. And that if we ask them to pay money, the court was actually quite convinced that the company could not pay that. Anyway, fortunately for us, this was a Friday. Sunday, a publication came out in Single, I'm where they showed how much the company at the time value was going to pay in dividend. The amount of either 185 billion, dividend was 9. You are not ready to pay 500. So anyway, I put that into our affidavit and all that. When the judge saw it, he asked them, wait, is it true? The point is that what the Attorney General of Lagos says it's not relevant. That's not what we're saying. Just is it true? Just tell them. Anyway, got a long story short. The second. So I think that there is also because you can't make all these phenomenal profits. The banks are making so much. But look at the number of people who are on contract for employment. It doesn't make sense. If you have these huge profits and then pay people in return, put them on contract. So you can't. So they are phenomenally rich individuals, phenomenally rich shareholders. Very, very poor employees. The nation is poorer by. I think that there has to be a way. For me, I think what it is the regulator and what the government, we all sit around the table and we agree. This is how we are going to slice this. It's possible for there to be a win-win. But I think that it is not a matter of government is paid on all this. Everyone must make it. The more subscribers, the more people have access to it, the better. To the point we're just making solid. If double the number of people currently who are paid, you will still pay.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming together. Thank you very much for your time. So that your time is, you are pressured for time at this moment. But I would like further to please give you a plaque, just appreciation for being here. I think it's a very timely, all right.
Well, Your Excellency, you can see from the reactor that it's very important. But more we still satisfied with more than that. There's some calculation. Learning the probably we don't get to know. So one kind of what I show you at one of NCCI is one of those bodies that is not don't go and praise the Lord. You recall the vice president when we were there, I was like, begin to send at time that we are investment for not having your and you call, you mean we get some to a different commission. But I don't have events to make sure because so let me see I will always like say what to do. That's what we can say. Not for sure you share your information. What you can do. Is it the opportunity? Thank you so much. Take the photo, the another picture with the that's the next influence by the there are times the last one together with the thank you. Thank you. Move this thing. Yeah, we don't need to move it. Yeah, thank you. Even this thing, yeah, it will be moved. Yeah, we'll move it.
Take it down.
Yeah, just 1 minute. Go. Yes. Some of us remember that car. All of us, yes. And then we understand the inheritance perfectly, Your Excellency. Yes. Please, can we please take the last one with the Excellency, all of us, please, members. Yeah. I'm staying twice, yeah. The first table and the second table. Yeah, shoulder, I don't Maybe we go to the other side. Sorry.
Thank you. Yes, okay. Can you pick up? Let me show you how to pick up. Thank you. So we have the next one here. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much. Just before we call it a close, let's say we'd like to have a word of thanks from the Deputy President of SCCI. Yes, we can have a six-up. Engineer Louis, as the next is word of thanks. Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you. That is a word of thanks.
Thank you very much. This is a family meeting today. It is a family meeting. Number one is a family meeting. At every family meeting, you will always stand the head of the family. On behalf of our president and all the council members here, and all our premium members, SCCI, our father, our leader, who has always been opening his door in and outside the office. You did 2 years ago at Castle Rock. We are here again, learning from our Pudiman professor. I always look at it, professor, is it because lawyers are learning gentlemen? But our professor, his son, is not just a learning gentleman, he's a professor of all fields, from economy to AI. We have used you as an inspiration so many years ago. You can't remember, sometimes year 2000. Then, as a commissioner, as the attorney general, as a preacher, as a pastor of a church, as an itinerary preacher, you came to my church without your 190. You drove yourself, and
We came out of the church, we had it 190 to start and it refused to start. It was then I knew the Honorable Commissioner drove with sense. And no wonder, I'm aware of your law report, that one actually. I supplied the power. I'm aware of your, as a lecturer, I counted about 8 jobs that were doing at the same time. A driver, attorney general, a commissioner, a lecturer, a lawyer, and a lawyer. Multitask. We have been through an administration to so many people. Many of us are just a driver. We don't do any other thing. Some of us are commissioners, we are not attorney general at the same time. Many of us are professors, we're only in the class. You are a lecturer, you are everything. Sir, thank you for making your knowledge available to us. Many of us here we are very happy, and if we can make a request, I'm sure many of us will want to be seeing you here every week and talk to us. But we can't have it. We know you belong to everyone. You belong to everyone, not like the other ones. Not everyone. Everywhere in the world, they want to listen to you. You are the pride of Nigeria. You have shown the whole world that knowledge is not scarce in Nigeria. So you have made it available at every time. Thank you very much, sir, for answering our call. But one thing I can assure you is that we will call again.
Thank you so much. On that note, Your Excellency, we are calling. Thank you so much. It's an honor to see you physically. Sir, I've always been seeing you on TV. Now I'm happy to ask you. Thank you, Your Excellency.